Access to medical care is becoming more and more of an issue here in Guam, and it doesn't even matter if you have the ability to pay. It's getting harder to see a doctor, to get an appointment, or to get the specialty care that you need. So I want to show you a growing solution to a growing problem. They're going to go out of their way to help find you a solution. And they've been growing their clinical services. Aside from this place looking and feeling homely, like this is their waiting area. Like, I don't think that people really understand that they do full clinical services here. Like, this is one of their clinical rooms. Look how nice it is. You get your vision exam here. So do you need to see an OBGYN, get family medicine done, internal medicine done? This is all stuff that's done here at the Total Guam Foundation. And just to tell you again, this place is not for profit. This is the psychologist's office. Yes, they have a psychology department. They also do psychiatry. It's an entire mental health department that they have here on top of all the other clinical services that they provide. If you need medical care, if you're having problems getting a doctor, getting an appointment, call the Todu Guam Foundation at 649-TODU or 649-8638. You can visit. Good morning and welcome to the 22nd day of July 2026. It is 8:25 in the morning. I know I'm late. I'm sorry for being late. My name is Troy Torres, and July 22 throughout all my life has been a very special day for me because it's my grandpa's birthday. My grandpa died back in 1997, but if he were alive today, he would be 102 years old. And yesterday was my grandparents' and wedding anniversary. It was dissolved when my grandpa died, right? But and then my grandma died in 2001. But I've always remember July 21 as both Liberation Day and my grandparents' wedding anniversary. And they were married on July 21, 1946, the second anniversary of Liberation Day. And so that yesterday would have been their 80th wedding anniversary. So it was a special day for my family to commemorate. I even wrote an opinion about it. And I published it on Kandit because I could. And also we don't... Actually, very recently, we stopped publishing letters to the editor from candidates for public office. There's actually one that came in from Senator Sean Gumatautau in his capacity as the chairman of the Republican Party of Guam. And I think I'm going to publish that one because it's in his capacity as Republican Party chair. You know, we're just such a relatively new news organization that a lot of times the decisions that we make are new to us. And so we've got to just figure this out, how to move forward with, because we have, there are requests to publish opinions from Joseph Arreola, but he's a candidate for senator. And I think from Peter Santos as well, but he's a candidate for attorney general. So I don't know. And anyway, thank you so much for joining me on the morning news analysis. There was none yesterday because it's not because it was a holiday, but because there was nothing that I was prepared to talk about. There wasn't really much news. Much of the news over the past month has been about either the typhoon or the budget. And so we did an exhaustive discussion about the budget, but that's over. The legislature passed that. There's still some stuff that we're putting out from it because we feel that there are important things for people to understand about it. But today we get to move on to other subjects. And first and foremost is I woke up this morning, realized the date and thought, oh my gosh, even though we've been putting out these reminders about the August 1 election, it didn't occur to me until this morning that there's only 10 days left until the election. And I've been calling it the election and not the primary election because I want people to go and vote. Because the primary election, in some respects, is even more important than the general election. Because in the primary, because historically fewer people vote in the primary, historically more of the political people vote in the primary, sometimes the better candidates are disqualified from the general election in the primary election. So if you want the truly best candidate who you think should be the next governor to advance to the general election, you got to vote in the primary. And I want to talk about today some prognostication, some spidey senses that I get about the gubernatorial election, but also based on some activity that's been going on. The other thing I want to talk about is a story that's in the PDN that I think captures the issue of the building of a new hospital as it relates to Governor Leon Guerrero's plans and the context for the future, and some things that Attorney General Douglas Moylan said. But I think what becomes pretty clear is that this years-long dispute that the AG and the governor have produced one winner, and that is the AG. The AG clearly won this dispute, because his entire thing was stop the governor from building what she wanted to build, and that happened. He stopped the governor from building what she wanted to build. And in an article in the PDN today, he said that he actually doesn't, he's not opposed to the Manilao location. He's not opposed to the EPAL location. What he was opposed to all along was the governor utilizing public funds for things that, according to him, did not receive legislative authority. Now, whether that authority was necessary, I don't know, or this is just an opinion of the Attorney General. At the end of the day, he won the dispute, and I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about birthright citizenship, because a few days ago, a member of Congress, a Republican from the 9th District of Virginia, introduced a resolution in the House to restrict birthright citizenship, so-called birthright citizenship, in U.S. territories. And the reason that it's being applied to U.S. territories is because recently the Supreme Court issued a ruling about how something like this could not be applied to, or executive action or congressional action that goes against the Constitution just could not be applied throughout the states. And so now they're turning their eyes at the territories, but they're also turning their eyes on the territories because of birthright citizenship issues that have historically plagued the CNMI, and concerns about China. Concerns that the government officials in the CNMI have been able to demonstrate no longer exist, at least not on the scale that they used to exist. So what is this really about? A couple of years ago, Mabel Lujan, one of our columnists, my favorite columnist on Kandit, she predicted this. She said, just wait, they're going to come after our citizenship. And here it is. And I want to talk about how at least Representative Morgan Griffith and anyone who supports this proposal by him in the U.S. House, and if it passes the House, then maybe even the Senate, would be coming after our citizenship. We'll get to these three subjects, and we'll start with the gubernatorial election on Guam on the other side of the commercial break. Do stick with us. Thank you so much, and good morning.
Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
I think it is pretty obvious who I'm not going to vote for in the election, the upcoming election. And the election is on August 1 here in Guam, for governor, for senator, for delegate to the U.S. House. I don't think the Attorney General is not on the ballot until the general election in November. I can't remember if there's anyone else. Anyway, those are the ones that are really important, right? So, I think it's pretty obvious who I'm not gonna vote for, right? Like this just based on my opinions, based on, well, just objectively on the stories that we have put out, the coverage that we've had, right? I'm talking about the governor's race. But I've noticed that that so I have my critics, right? And sometimes if we put something out that is political in nature, or that has a tinge of politics, uh, and that criticizes one group or another, or praises someone over another, right? There are political people who get very offended and they make assumptions. And I've seen some of those comments where people assume that I'm supporting one person or another. And it's kind of funny to me because most of it is wrong, actually. And but it makes me feel good knowing that who it is that I want to vote for. I've made up my mind. I already know who I'm going to vote for. Who it is that I want to vote for is not all that obvious. And uh, taking from that, you know, it's been it's the same amount of disappointing as in previous elections, reading the type of BS that people put out, right? And I'm talking about the political people, not the ones who are holding office, but their supporters. Sometimes and I'm not talking about those of you who are maybe involved at the village level, or who are just run of the mill supporters of a candidate. I'm talking about people who are involved in these campaigns. They normally have like jobs on the line, or they've been promised something, or whatever, right? They're the ones who go berserk. They go crazy. There are a couple of these pages on Facebook where people are just downright ugly about the political issues, right? So setting those people aside, if we erase those types of comments from our consideration in this discussion, I'm noticing more and more that, and this is the reason that we're prognosticating this way, is because on the Democrat side, I don't know of any credible poll that has come out about who's ahead in that election. There's a poly market thing that has Therese Terlahi ahead of Josh Tenorio, and then Joseph Augustine's very low. But I don't know. It's not like that can predict something, and it's not a poll. On the Republican side, the race is very close on poly market, and according to polling that I have been told about, credible polling I've been told about by credible sources, it's a close race. So we'll talk about that in a second. But if you subtract all of the political people, the usual suspects who support one team or another, subtract them. Go with the names that you see in the comments from regular people. When I say regular people, I'm talking about, real people. You go onto their profile, you see that they post things about their family and about church, and they have real pictures, and they're just regular people in this community, and they hardly ever comment on things, right? When you see them comment on the gubernatorial race, there's a clear picture that emerges of who is ahead on the Republican side and on the Democrat side, and more so on the Democrat side than on the Republican side. I'm not going to say who, because I don't want to. I'm not trying to color the election one way for the Democrat side and one way for them on the Republican side. But I do notice there is a clear direction. Now, what I wonder about, and it's not just on the comments on Facebook or on Instagram, but it's also in people's discussions on WhatsApp groups that I'm in or that I'm not in, and I'm told about. There is a clear favorite on the Democrat side, at least according to conversations among real people. And there is a somewhat favorite on the Republican side. And I have to note that I'm not sure which candidate on the Republican side has the momentum. That's not clear right now. And I don't think it's clear right now who has the momentum on the Democrat side either. what I'm wondering about these conversations that are happening on the online sphere, right? Whether it's comments on Facebook and Instagram or it's these WhatsApp conversations that people are having, is first and foremost, how many of those people are registered to vote and how many of them are going to go and vote on August 1. That's just like such a key distinction. Like anyone who runs for office, especially for governor, like if your number one priority is not getting your voters to go and vote on election day, then throw in the towel because there's nothing for you to do. Like how is that? How do you have any like how do you have a purpose in your election? Like if you're not trying to win, what are you doing? And if you are trying to win, why wouldn't your number one thing be getting people who you believe are going to vote for you to go and actually vote on election day? And it's not the easiest thing to do. I don't care how popular you are. I don't care how many people in the line at Payless or at the bank or at or as you're leaving church come up to you and tell you, "Hey, I'm supporting you. I hope you win," or whatever. If you cannot convince those people to wake up on a Saturday morning and not do their normal anticipated Saturday thing, and for 2 hours sacrifice their Saturday time to get ready, go drive to the polls, wait. I don't think the wait's going to be, there's not going to be a wait in the line on a Saturday primary election, right? But wait just a little bit in a little bit of a line, go check mark yourself or whatever, make sure you bring your proper ID, and then spend the time to leave the polling site. You would think it's like a couple of hours, right? It's probably more like 45 minutes or a 30-minute investment in time or something like that. But if you cannot convince them to do that, you're not going to win the election because you need people to vote for you at the election, right? And so that's number one. How many of them are registered? And of those, how many are actually going to go and vote? The second that I'm unsure of about these online conversations is how many of them are on Guam? And if they're not on Guam, how many of them are casting absentee ballots? Because what we're unsure of seeing, unless we know the people, is whoever's commenting, for a certain candidate or whatever, are they actually going to vote? Because are they actually on Guam or did they leave Guam? Because remember, a lot of our people left Guam, and a lot of our people who left Guam are very much in tune with Guam issues online, whether it's on WhatsApp or on Facebook and Instagram. So it's kind of a weird thing that we're seeing, right? So those are the two key factors. And it's like, and because there's no credible polling on the Democrat side, it's not easy to figure this one out. It's like, if you have a favorite candidate on the Democrat side, you better call up that candidate and be like, I hope you're working hard, and I hope or if you want, volunteer and be like, is there anything that I can do to help you on election day to get other people to come and vote if you really want that one candidate to win? That's what this is all about, right? Now, on the Republican side, it's a little different. There is credible polling that I've been told about by credible people in the Republican side. This election started as, on the Republican side of things, as it was, I think the term is "ada calvos to lose." It's theirs to lose. When the team that's ahead, you say it's their election to lose, right? I think that's the terminology, if I'm not mistaken. This election started with Ada Calvo as the juggernaut. They even had far and away the best media, the best messaging. Their messaging was really, really good when they started. And then I don't know what happened. Like their messaging has not been as concise since then. I don't see them. I definitely don't see them as much as I see Blas Okada stuff online. Okay. And I don't know whether any of the gubernatorial teams are canvassing, actually. And the reason I say that is because I live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of people in Jigo. And no one has dropped any oh my gosh, I hate these stupid flies. They're just gonna, no one, there's so many flies. No one has dropped any pamphlets. No one's done any canvassing in my area that I know of. My neighbors haven't sent anything. I don't know if my house is being ignored or whatever. Maybe people know. I don't know, but there's nothing. And I haven't really heard of anyone but Joe St. Augustine and Dwayne St. Nicholas doing canvassing in other areas. And I know that they are canvassing because Joe St. Augustine and his wife told me so themselves, that they personally go out canvassing. And I also know that they're canvassing because if you go throughout Dededo and Jigo, the most signs that you'll see on neighborhood homes are St. Augustine, St. Nicholas signs. And that can only come from canvassing of villages, which is a very important thing to do. P.S. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to eat my oatmeal. Okay, maybe I won't do that anymore. So, a few weeks ago, let's try that. Let's go back even further. More than a month ago, Dr. Ron McNinch released polling data that showed Ada Calvo with a comfortable lead over Blas Okada. Okay, on the Democrat side, it was pardon me. There is a credible poll on the Democrat side, and it is in a head-to-head race that Dr. Ron McNinch scored. It was more than a month ago, and in that race, Joe St. Augustine was very low, but the Josh and Tina and the Therese and Sabina team were neck and neck. There was a 1-point difference between the two. And that was more than a month ago. So, things could change. Things definitely have changed since then. How they've changed, I don't know. But anyway, so after that, where there was a comfortable lead that Ada Calvo had over Blas Okada, there was a Republican poll that came out. And this was just a few weeks ago. And that Republican poll, I'm told, I didn't see it myself, but I'm told by a credible source, had Ada Calvo ahead of Blas Okada by 7 points, which is not as comfortable, but it's still a relatively comfortable lead to have in 2 months prior to an election. I'm told by a couple sources, one of the same ones from 3 weeks ago and a news source, both credible, that the new Republican poll shows that the race has tightened to just within 4 points. Ada Calvo ahead by 4 points over Blas Okada, which seems to suggest there is a momentum on that side and that Blas Okada has the momentum. But keep in mind that polls are point in time measurements of a race. It's not like you can't say that momentum will remain or whatever. Momentum can very much change right after the poll is taken. And so can the results of the poll. So if 3 weeks ago, Ada Calvo was ahead by 7 points, and very recently, Ada Calvo's lead drops to only 4 points, and there's, with just 3 weeks left until the election from the time that the poll was taken, so you can imagine that that's a close race. You can imagine that Blas Okada has the ability to prevail over Ada Calvo. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because of something that I'm seeing online, something that I believe to be highly illegal and against federal law. The only saving grace that whoever the culprit might have is that the Trump administration has gotten rid of the office within the Department of Justice that investigates this type of thing. But the statute of limitations it's either 5 years or 10 years on this thing. And so whenever the next president comes in and reinstitutes this office within the Department of Justice, and believe me, no matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican who makes it into the White House in 2020 and 2029, they're absolutely going to reinstitute this office because it's to each party's political benefit. There is the possibility that whoever is involved in committing these crimes will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And it's called foreign interference in a United States election. I can't remember what section of US code it is, but here's what's happening. And you guys have probably seen it. there have been an increase over the last 3 weeks of, and they coincide with the polling, the Republican polling, like when this thing started, right? About 3 weeks ago, we started to see all of these new names and weird pictures and profiles, and people who have 67 friends, 425 friends, and they say they're from Barragata Heights, Guam, or they say they're from Liguan Terrace, Guam. But then if you look down further, you see that they were unable to hide that their profile was created in the Philippines. And you see that the only thing that these people share, I mean, some of them try to disguise it with photos of real people who don't look like they're from Guam at all. And scenes that are not necessarily from Guam, unless they are scenes without people in it, just see this pictures that they could have gotten from anybody on Guam. And then some of them even have political stuff on it, right? And these, over the last 3 weeks, have been attacks on Blas Okada, and over the last week have been attacks on Therese Terlahi and Sabina Perez. And they are made to look like they are in favor of Ada Calvo. Now, I don't know. This is definitely, it's a troll farm. One of the political campaigns is paying for a troll farm. And whether it's directly through campaign funds or one of their surrogates who is tasked to do this, or, the off chance that someone is going rogue because they know that they're close to the campaign, they know the poll results, and they're doing so. This is black operations. Someone has a troll farm, and it's either, you know what? I don't even know of the either, right? So okay, here are the possibilities, right? The most obvious would be Ada Calvo slinging mud at Blas Okada because of concern that Blas Okada might pull off an upset in the primary election. Or Josh and Tina have internal polling showing that they're ahead, but their internal polling also shows that in head-to-head races in the general election, Tenorio versus Ada versus Tenorio versus Blas shows that they would prevail over Blas, but they will not prevail over Ada. So they're trying to interfere in the Republican primary, not by if they can get Blas elected in the Republican primary by having these black operations, that would be good for them, etc. But what they really want, and I'm not saying that this is actually what they're doing. I'm just thinking, like, if I were in their team, like, this is what I would be thinking, right? If they wanted to break up the Republican Party, they would sow discord within the Republican Party. And they would, if they see in their polling that Blas Okada is going to lose against Ada Calvo, they would attack Blas Okada and make it look like it came from Ada Calvo, so that when the Blas Okada people lose, they are very upset with the Ada Calvo people. And they would go and vote for Josh and Tina. What's throwing me for a loop, like what I don't understand is if that is the case, right? If it is the Josh people who are the ones throwing this mud in order to upset the Republican election, is why is it that over the last week, these same people in these troll farms have turned their attention on Therese Terlahi? Now they're doing all the mudslinging on Therese Terlahi. It's very confusing. All I know is that there is a troll farm. It very likely is foreign operated, foreign paid, which is highly illegal. I just want everyone, I would just, if any of you are involved in this troll farm, I would just like you to remember that what you're doing is very, very illegal. And while there might not be an investigation right now because there aren't the resources in the Justice Department to do it, if you remember this, This is a Republican-controlled administration that hates Democrats. If you are a Democrat who is operating a troll farm out of a foreign country, violating a United States law, they will absolutely dedicate resources to prosecute you now. And if you are a Republican doing it, the next president and the next Justice Department is absolutely going to dedicate resources to prosecute you then, because the statute of limitations would not have been completed. This is a federal statute that prohibits this type of thing. And this would not be the first time that a gubernatorial election in Guam would have participated or promulgated a foreign paid troll farm to interfere in the elections on Guam. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know these profiles on Facebook that are doing this, and you see it. What you should do when you see this stuff is block those people, because they are up to absolutely no good, and they're paid to be up to absolutely no good. They have no vested interest. They don't even know what the issues are on this island. They don't live these struggles. They don't live these issues. They're just paid. It's nothing personal to them. They're just paid to interfere in our election for a certain team, for a certain purpose. Whose team that is, I don't know. It's kind of like a weird thing. I mean, I suppose it could also be the St. Augustine people trying to interfere. I don't know. It would be a little more far-fetched for it to be a St. Augustine person, a Turlahi person, or a Blas person. It makes the most sense that this is coming from either Ada Calvo or from Josh and Tina. Very curious. Like, who it's coming from would tell me what the internal polling in both sides is showing. If this is coming from Ada Calvo, then the internal polling must be showing that Blas Okada has the momentum. If this is coming from Josh and Tina, then their internal polling must show that they are the ones winning the primary election and that they are concerned about Ada Calvo in the general election. But I don't know. I'm not sure. All I know is I know who I'm going to vote for. And on August 1, I'll be going to the elections to go and vote. And I hope that you do too. On the other side of the commercial break, I want to talk about a PDN story that I think concisely encapsulates how the governor has lost in her dispute against the attorney general, and the further context of what that means for the hospital, for the building of a hospital moving forward. We'll talk about these things on the other side of the commercial break. Stick with us. Welcome back to the show. I spent a lot more time than I thought I would on that one subject. My name is Troy Torres. It's 8:58 in the morning on Wednesday, July 22, 2026. And we just finished talking about the gubernatorial race. I guess I kind of like talking about stuff like that. So I got a little carried away. May the best person win, by the way. What I want to talk about now is a story in the PDN that it's written by, no wonder, it's Joe Titano II, excellent reporter. It's titled AG Moylan, next governor will decide where to build hospital. And I thought that headline was interesting to me, right? Because here you have this fight between the AG and the governor. And it seemed like it was, you know, what the governor wants versus what the AG wants in terms of where to build the hospital or how much the hospital would cost. But if you read this story by Joe Taitano, he puts there is a better light that's cast on the attorney general in terms of what his purpose was in fighting Governor Leon Guerrero on this. And to be clear, the AG won this fight. Like the AG's entire purpose was to stop the governor, to stop Leon Guerrero from building her hospital in Manila. But listen to this story. This is interesting. Ahead of Thursday talks that could potentially settle legal battles tying up the governor's Manila hospital project, Attorney General Douglas Moylan said he has no objection to a Manila hospital site. That's interesting. I've never heard that before. Okay, continuing. But he said Governor Leon Guerrero never got approval from senators for the hospital site, and that it will be up to the next governor of Guam to decide where to build. Okay. I want to stop here for a second because this goes back to our earliest coverage of this whole idea of where to build the hospital. And it started with the surprise from the governor that there had been no public letting out of information. She just one day came to everybody and said, "Hey, I got this study done. It was done by Matrix. And according to this study, I'm going to build a new hospital on Eagles Field," right? She says, "I have decided that this is where I'm going to build the new hospital. I just have to work out a land issue with the Navy." Now, prior to our knowledge of a letter from the Secretary of the Navy that said that he intended to declare the Eagles Field property as excess federal property, which put a whole new complexion on the whole thing, right? This is, I want to say this was back in 2022, maybe 2023. I don't remember. This is earlier on. So quite a while ago. Prior to that, when we first heard about this here at Kandit, the very first thing that we criticized was how could the governor decide a land issue when the Organic Act very clearly gives the power of the disposition of public lands to the legislature. And so I don't know if that's where the Attorney General is going with this, and I don't know if that's his legal argument, is that the Organic Act places this power with the legislature, but it's always been something that, from the beginning of our coverage on this thing, has been something that stood out, was how could the governor decide the use of public land when it's the legislature, according to the Organic Act, that decides it. Anyway, continuing with the story, the Attorney General said, "I don't object to Tamuning. I don't object to Mangilao. What I object to is that they didn't go to the legislature. They tried on the Democrat legislature. It's true. They tried on the Republican. It's true. And there's some reason why 15 senators don't want to build it where she wants to build." End quote. Lawmakers authorized the government of Guam to finance construction of a new hospital way back in 2021 with payments up to $35 million per year. Hold on, let me just multiply that. I feel that that's like 1.05 billion or something like that. Hold on. 35 million times 30 years, or yeah, 1.05 billion. Hey, I was right with my math. $1.05 billion in a bond. Okay. But I think we all expected that. And, it's a hospital, right? So, when you compare that against $524 million for one public school that does not have the types of, construction realities and construction considerations as a hospital, it really makes that whole Simon Sanchez $524 million price tag look completely ridiculous. Anyway, but bills put forth to lease Navy land, use government land in Mangilao, or require construction in Tamuning for the new hospital all failed over the years. The governor last month dedicated a 45 to 47 acre property in Mangilao for the hospital, land that was secured without backing from senators, whom the governor has said were dragging their feet on the project. Leon Guerrero gave the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority a $12.2 million loan of federal American Rescue Plan funds in 2024 to purchase the land. Moylan filed a federal lawsuit to block what he called the illegal project that same year, and several court cases have since popped up. Attorneys for the AG and the governor will sit down before U.S. District Court Judge John Coffenor, Coughenor, Coffenor, I don't know, Thursday to try and settle the lawsuits. Whatever the outcome, the AG said he believes it will be up to the next elected governor to convince lawmakers of the hospital location and then secure financing for the build with Leon Guerrero's 8-year term ending. So that one sentence is just packed with so much to unpack. So let's take the first part. Let's take the very last part of the sentence, which is the slap in the face to Governor Leon Guerrero, with Leon Guerrero's 8-year term ending. This is the part of the story that makes it very clear that Moylan won. He won the dispute between him and the governor. You know who really loses with this whole thing, right? And we've written. I think I wrote an opinion. It wasn't a candid editorial, but I wrote an opinion about how the real losers in this is us, the people of Guam, and the culprits are all of them. Like, it isn't just Leon Guerrero's fault or Doug Moylan's fault or the legislatures. It is like all of their fault that since 2014, 2015, when Eddie Calvo wanted to build a new hospital, this has not been done. It's just all of their fault. And, you know, the AG or Joe Tyson II kind of makes the argument here when he talks about, no, actually, I think it's the AG. The AG makes the argument here when he talks about how, you know, Democrat legislature wouldn't let her do it. A Republican legislature wouldn't let her do it, right? And same needs to be said about the Democrat legislature during the Calvo administration, who wouldn't let him build a new hospital, right? It's just all of them who are involved in this, or who were supposed to have been involved in this. They could never get along. They could never compromise. They could never, it was my way or the highway for all of them. Generally, the senators at the time didn't want Calvo to have the win. The senators throughout this past 8 years have not wanted Leon Guerrero to have a win. But also, there's the concern about corruption. I mean, let's not forget that, right? Which is the premise of Doug Moylan's entire thing, is like, look, you want to commit public funds to this, I don't trust you. And the legislature obviously has not allowed you to choose this land, and like, you don't have the authority to do so, right? This one sentence is just packed with so much. He says, whatever the outcome, the AG said he believes it will be up to the next governor to convince lawmakers. So if Doug Moylan's reelected, right, this is not some free pass for whoever's the next governor. I suppose if it's Josh Tenorio, he's going to give that guy as much hell as he gave Leon Guerrero, because they're peas in a pod, right? They're the same. It's a continuation of the current administration. If it's any of the others, he's going to give them just as much hell if they do things the way Leon Guerrero and Josh Tenorio have done over the past 7 years. At least that's what I'm reading from this sentence, because according to the Attorney General here, he wants the next governor to convince lawmakers. That's his legal stand, is that the senators have to make the decision on the location. Now, I don't know whether that's backed up by case law. I have no idea. All I know is that the Organic Act says that the legislature is responsible for the disposition of public land. So maybe that's where he's getting it. I don't know. Maybe we should get the AG on the air on another day so that we can talk to him more about that stance. But because Leon Guerrero was not able to do that, her term is going to end without her building a hospital. It's going to be a failure on her record. And so that one sentence is just packed with so much. Continuing on with Joe Titano's story, some of the 5 gubernatorial teams competing in election 2026 have differing opinions about the site of a new hospital. The Pacific Daily News has reported not everyone has clarified what site they prefer. Quote, last time I checked, this governor's term ends with mine, and it's in early January, Moylan told the PDN. Quote, if she wants to build her own hospital, she's got a bank. Build her own hospital. So she could put her name on it. No, I'm not kidding. She really said that. He really said that. Like, this is a quote from the AG in the PDN story. But continuing with the quote, but until such time as she gets our people's authority to build that $1.5 billion hospital, do not use our money, end quote. I have, so I want to just clarify to everybody that it ain't $1.5 billion. If the principal, no, it is. I'm sorry. It could be 1.5 billion. And never mind. I was thinking of dumb math in my head. Never mind. X what I said. Yeah, $1.5 billion hospital. Do not use our money. End quote. Estimates for the hospital and associated medical complex were put at around $1 billion back in 2021. Since then, private and public sector officials have reported construction costs steadily rising. Moylan told the PDN it was his job as AG to remind everyone that the Organic Act of Guam, oh, here it is, put the fundamental power to appropriate money with the Guam legislature. Oh, I'm sorry. So they're not talking about the land thing. They're talking about the appropriation part. Quote, what I care about is the debt that you and I, my client, is going to have to incur, end quote, he said. Moylan said he still has yet to see any designs for the new hospital complex or concrete financing. Well, because we're not on the portion of the whole, like we're not even on section 1A of this whole thing. The design thing is not, you have to fund that I have to imagine that that becomes part of the RFP. Leon Guerrero in May said her administration will move forward with architectural and engineering work for the new hospital, with $60 million set aside in Guerrero's new Fix in 6 disaster grant to cover it. Boy, I wonder who's going to get that contract. She has also pointed to interest from GovGuam's investors in financing a hospital, shown during trips to New York in May. Leon Guerrero has blamed Moylan's lawsuit in opposition to the hospital project for jeopardizing $104 million in federal American Rescue Plan funds set aside for water, power, and sewer installs at the Manilao site. You know, that is a really sad thing. Like they were going to put in all of those infrastructure upgrades to that area of Manilao, which would have been supremely beneficial for the residents there and the future residents there. And truly, the governor's vision for this thing is a beautiful vision. Like, can I just say that? Like, in my opinion, it's just a beautiful vision for the economic development of the island. But it doesn't matter because that vision's dead now. With the project stalled and a December 31 deadline to spend federal funds approaching, the governor has reported shifting $75 million to other projects. Boy, I really hope the public auditor is paying attention to all those projects. P.S. She has said Guam Waterworks Authority may be able to use up some $26.8 million for off-the-shelf work near the hospital area in the 6-month timeline. Moylan, speaking to the PDN earlier this month, said his office had yet to receive any procurements for hospital infrastructure from GWA. Asked whether he would agree to allow any waterworks projects near the Manilao site move forward following Thursday's settlement, he said, quote, my intent right now is to save that money, end quote. He's not giving up, but he's like, nope. Governor, it ain't gonna happen. Gotta wait for the next governor. The question was whether or not money would go to the hospital project, he said. Moylan has asserted that any federal funds put toward the project could be clawed back by the U.S. Quote, I'm all gung-ho for working with the governor in order to find a legal use of the money, but the court's going to have to understand where we are at today. Well, actually, the court doesn't have to understand anything. The court is going to make a ruling, and then everybody has to understand what the court's ruling is. But other than that, what are your thoughts on this? My ultimate thought, my foremost thought on this is, damn it. Our people, our leaders couldn't get it together again. They could not again build us a new hospital. That's my very first thought on this thing. My second thought on this thing is, yeah, all of you guys are at fault. My third thought on this thing is, I don't know what the term is, because it's not simply sympathy. It's like a mixture of sympathy with binetsu. And that is, this article really makes it visceral, the loss that Leon Guerrero has incurred here, right? The political loss and the loss to her legacy, which is a big, big deal for her, at least. And so in that sense, I feel bad for her. But in another sense, I feel like it's binetsu on her. that she was so unyielding, so uncompromising, so dead set on having it her way or the highway, and in not caring to work with senators to convince senators of her point, because senators were asking questions that she and her administration could never answer directly, could never answer straight, or just ignored altogether. And so, what do you think how do you think that's going to convince at least objective and reasonable senators to be on your side? And if you cannot convince objective and reasonable senators to do what it is that you're asking them to do, and if you're coming into this whole thing with, I don't even have to ask you for this, you should do this because this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to do, I'm going to do it. But if you want to support it, then you can jump along and support us because we're going to do that. Look at where that attitude got the governor. Absolutely nowhere. It's the same attitude that Eddie Calvo had when he was trying to build GMH and trying to do some other things. And so in that sense, it's like a binetsu on both of them, right? It's when you have that level of hubris and arrogance, because you're the governor, because nobody should question what you're doing, because everybody should just go along, it's probably not going to end up very well for you. Maybe you'll get some points here or there. Maybe you will get what you want along the way, but at the end of it, you're going to lose. And this is, Leon Guerrero, I'm sure, has learned a very hard political lesson here. She lost to the Attorney General. And she lost to her opponents in the legislature and her political opponents because she didn't want to work with people. And at the end of the day, that has cost us. We're the ones who have suffered because of it. On the other side of the commercial break, let's see, it's already 9:15. Okay, I wanted to talk about birthright citizenship. Actually, it was the very first thing I wanted to talk about. But I knew it was going to take the longest. I don't have the time to raise the third subject. So, and then tonight I wanted to play the tourism forum, the gubernatorial tourism forum. So I think we'll move the birthright citizenship discussion to tomorrow morning's show, to the Thursday news analysis, so that we can spend adequate time on that and whatever other issues that there are. So in the meantime, for Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Have a blessed morning, and I love you all.
We delivered. Guam AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off, or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
This stuff's hitting the spot.